It's been a while. Hi guys, if anyone's out there. I can make this, what can I do? I can make this a little bigger. Yeah, it's been a while since I did any live streaming, but what we're gonna be figuring out today is, I can make this smaller, and how do I usually do this? Let's start a new project, or a new file, and let's just write down what we're doing today. So the goal of today is to figure out if we can wrap a REST API with a GraphQL client. So we're gonna, or REST API with a GraphQL proxy server of sorts. So we're going to take a REST API and that is way too much zoom. Can you wrap an old REST API with a GraphQL proxy? And the goal here is to show that you can start using GraphQL today. You don't have to rewrite your entire backend. Goal, start using GraphQL today without rewriting your backend. So that's gonna be the goal. That's gonna be, can you kill him please? That's gonna be what we try to figure out. And we're gonna get started by creating a new project. And going from there, I'm gonna use the API we have at work, which we've built over the last like 5 years or something. We've cobbled it together and now it's starting to break apart and being a huge problem and a big pain in the ass with how it works and how you can use it. And yeah, we're gonna see how far we get. I think there should be a chat embedded on the stream. If it's not, please let me know in the chat room. The chat room in theory is connected from and works from anywhere, and yeah, we'll see how it goes. So let's start a new project. Now, how do I start a new project? Wow. So I'm gonna go into CD documents, random coding, and I would make this one open source, but because I'm gonna be connecting to a real API, that might not be the best idea. So we're gonna just start with a random project. So make dir GraphQL proxy, GraphQL REST proxy. So this is going to be like a proof of concept, cd GraphQL REST proxy, and we say git init to make a new project, git init to make a new project, and then we run, what's the next thing we need? We need to do yarn init to create a new thing. So description, proof of concept using GraphQL with an old REST API server. So that's gonna be the goal. We're gonna use that, and there's no repository. I'm the author, license MIT, fine, it's not private. And the next thing I need is I'm going to copy TypeScript config from some of my old projects. So we're gonna basically model this on the hey, today my day is going pretty well. How's yours? Sorry. Yeah, the chat room is on my right and the camera is on my left, which seems kind of silly, but there's a reason for that. What else do I need? I'm going to go into Markdown landing page here, and we're going to cheat a little bit and copy the basic setup from the course I teach on serverless React, because I am going to be running this on AWS Lambda, so I don't have to run it locally. So we're going to look at package. I'm going to copy tsconfig, cp / markdown landing page server tsconfig json to dot. Okay, we copied the TypeScript config file, then we are going to install a couple of things that I know we're gonna need. So we're going to yarn add Apollo server and Apollo server Lambda so that we don't have to deal with that stuff. Apollo server Lambda. We're also going to need, do we need AWS Lambda? I think we do just in case. So AWS Lambda, audio okay, video terrible. So Julian, I don't know why, but Periscope makes the video really bad. If you go on Twitch or YouTube, I think the video quality is better. Okay, so we're installing that. We're also going to need isomorphic fetch because we're going to be making REST API requests. And what else do we need? We're going to need GraphQL so that we have the GraphQL tag for adding, for writing queries actually. And we need add types for AWS Lambda, add types for AWS SDK, add types for isomorphic fetch. And what else do we need? That should be it. So I'm installing all of the dependencies right now. And then we're going to quickly bootstrap a basic GraphQL server. And then once we have that, we're going to try to connect it to my API or the API we use at work. I'm going to make there a source file. And let's copy over the serverless YAML config as well so that I don't have to type it all over from scratch. Markdown landing page. And yes, I know there should be, I should really make a CLI that lets me just bootstrap a project from scratch. Serverless YAML to dot. So we open now the project, random coding, GraphQL REST proxy, proof of concept. Sure, we can save that file to desktop, whatever. So we've got that. Let's open serverless YAML. So serverless YAML says that the service is a cool. Okay, I'm happy that the video and audio are both okay on YouTube. So I'm taking the serverless YAML config from my previous project or from my video course, and we're going to call this GraphQL REST proxy. And the provider is AWS. We're using Node.js. We're going to say dev stage. We don't need any environment variables right now. Do we need any of these IAM role statements? We do not. Cool. We're going to have a GraphQL function that is this GraphQL handler. Get requests and post requests both work. We don't need the Stripe session and we don't need any resources. Wonderful. So we've got a basic GraphQL REST proxy. Dean Kamali asks what my thoughts are on Meteor.js. I would recommend not using Meteor.js because if I remember correctly, the original group who was working on Meteor turned themselves into Apollo and they're all now working on GraphQL. So I think that is telling enough for whether you should work on Meteor.js or not. Okay, we've got the serverless YAML. Now we have source, and let's just copy over the GraphQL setup. So server source GraphQL, and I'm going to explain what the GraphQL setup actually does. So GraphQL TS. We're not going to have any mutations or queries just yet. We also don't have a schema. And query pages mutation. We don't need anything here. Apollo server gets created. Okay. So this is the very basic boilerplate for a GraphQL server or on an AWS Lambda. We have to define the schema, which I think needs to have at least a query. And we need to define the resolvers for each part of the schema. Then we create a server using Apollo server from Apollo server Lambda. And we create the handler and export it from our function. So I should be able to, let's create a hello world query just to make sure our code is actually working. So we're going to define type query. Was it type query? I think it's type query. Let's double check that to make sure. Type query, yes. So type query is going to have a hello world query that returns a string, and we're going to define our hello world query as just returning hello world. All right, so this should allow us, and we don't need mutations right now, I think. So this should allow us to deploy to serverless and then test that the basic setup works, and then we can start working on actually wrapping our REST API. I'm going to also go into package.json and copy these scripts so I don't have to type them again. So we have a build script that just runs TypeScript to compile our project. And then we run build and serverless deploy. So for the deploy, so I'm going to git add dot and going to say git commit -a-m boilerplate. And we run yarn deploy. So this should now build our server and deploy it to AWS, and then we should get a URL that lets us run a hello world GraphQL query so that we can verify that the basic setup works before we start working with the actual yes, Ido, there is a parrot in the background. Okay, so this is deploying. While that deploys, let me grab my work laptop and run the proxies, run the API server so that we actually have something to test against. So, work laptop. All right. And yes, the reason we're gonna run this from my work laptop, not from production, should be obvious to everyone, and it's I want to make sure we're using test data and I'm not revealing anything about actual production data that I shouldn't be revealing. Okay, let's see, is this computer even charged? If it's not charged, I'm gonna have to go grab a charger. All right, computer's unlocking. Let me run my Rails server. Actually, I'm gonna quit as many of the things as I can. So come on. Yeah, this is not a very fast computer, unfortunately. Okay, so AWS deployed. We have here, you see the other computer that's going to run the REST API. I'm going to run that right now. Just give me a second. Okay, git checkout master. And we go, how do I run this? npm start and host Rails S. Yeah, so Rails is starting up on this computer, which should then allow us to connect to it from the AWS thing. So now that we have the AWS or the serverless GraphQL server should be running, which means I can go to this URL that it spit out. I have to change this. So we have the URL, and now I can say query hello world should return what? Oh, I don't actually know how to do this. Okay, let's just run a hello world query and see what happens. Hello world, yes. Okay, so the basic, let me zoom this in as well so you can see it better. What? Oh, come on, computer, stop doing weird shit. Okay, so we have a hello world GraphQL server working, which means we should now get started on actually making RESTful API requests. And let's try to make a REST API request first in, where do we do it first? I'm also going to have to remember how to do authentication for our backend, because I haven't done that from scratch in a while. However, I have recently implemented a library for that, so I'm going to copy from there, and I'm going to first show you the actual API endpoint we're going to try to improve, using GraphQL. And you'll see why you need GraphQL for that API endpoint once you see how much stuff it spits out. So if we go to Yup Utils, we have here a network helper. In here somewhere, network helper, and we're going to make basically a version of this request. This token probably is not something you should see, but whatever, we can rotate these things. So I'm gonna, let's see, what's the easiest way to test this? Let's run TS node, and we're going to make this API request basically. So we're going to say actually, let's define headers first, or let's do it in here. So I'm going to type the code here so that we can then paste it in TS node and get the output, so you can see why I need GraphQL at work so much. Playground here. So that's the playground. So we say const headers equals this stuff here. We take content type authorization and those headers. The token, I think I can hard code that token for now. This is so insecure. It's also one of the things I've been saying at work, is that we need to make our API a little bit more secure. So I have that token. I should now be able to make a get request. So we say fetch from https squeezes.ngrok.io, and we go to API/user, right? I think that's the one. How can I verify that? I'm going to look at my server code. What's the easiest way to look at screen grabbing now? Yeah, it's okay, robot. You can joke about stuff like that. So I'm going to look at my Rails code, or well, the last time I checked it out on my home computer, just so that I can see which parameters exist, because as you might guess, we don't really have a very good, we don't have documentation. There's not a lot of documentation on this stuff. So I'm gonna go into the user's controller, and let's see, what do we get to show? So render template users show the current user, which means I need to log in. How do I log in as a user? That's gonna be fun, because we only have an API to show the current user. Okay, so I'm gonna have to log in as a user. I don't know how to do that. But let's try this fetch first and see what we get. So we're gonna get a response. We're going to JSON that response, and then we're going to, okay, let's await this. Const res equals await fetch. No, I can't await because we're gonna be running this in the console. Then console log. So we're gonna get something back. So I'm gonna run TS node and import fetch from isomorphic fetch, that, and we run const headers. This should define the headers. That worked. And now I'm making a request to my work laptop to see what actually happens. Invalid REPL keyword. So the request happened on my backend machine, but this code was not run well. So I'm going to say import fetch from isomorphic fetch, and the reason we are doing this in the console, not directly by deploying to the server, is that this is a little bit faster than waiting for Lambda deploys every time. So importing pending promise, and we get unhandled promise rejection warning, invalid JSON response body. Superb. So that means that our API doesn't always return JSON. Sometimes it throws HTML errors when bad things happen, which is great. You need to include the headers. I do need to include the headers. That is a great point, Alistair. Let's try that. Wow. That was pretty dumb of me. So headers, let's try that again. Oh, actually, I know what I can do. I can wrap this in parentheses, and then it's going to be easier to copy paste, but it doesn't let me do that. Yay. So let's wrap it in a function then. Function test call, like that, and then we just run the test call. Cool. Import fetch. What is JSON v2? So JSON v2 is not really a thing that exists. It's something we made up at work to basically to version our API. So instead of having API/v1 and API/v2, we decided to use a content type header that tells you, or the accept header that tells you whether to use v2 or v1. It's kind of historic at this point. We haven't used this in we probably switched to v2 about 5 or 6 years and then never deprecated v1 or did anything else with that. So we just keep sending this header with every request. All right. Undefined method is that you mean in, and that would be in the blah because there's no current user. Awesome. So now I'm going to check how we actually log in as a user. I have what does my company do? The company is this, yup.com. Let's see if that actually goes through. So yup.com is the company. I'm now going to look at the other library I built earlier this week that does logging in so that I can fake login. I think I'm gonna have to send cookies and shit, which is going to be annoying. So let's see. I'm going to get an access token and stuff like that. That is definitely not stuff you should see. Are they considering replacing Rails? Yes, we've been considering replacing Rails for the last many years, and we just never get around to it because it's a lot of work to replace Rails, especially in a product that's this mature. So let's see, how does logging in work? We send a request to login. So let's try that. Function login. So this is the hard part of working with an existing REST API, is that you have to deal with these various things like you have to deal with logging in and stuff like that. But then once we have that, it should be pretty easy, I hope. So we're going to say const response equals fetch to that same https swizzes.ngrok.io/API/login and Elixir Phoenix. I don't know about Elixir and Phoenix, guys, but right now I'm just trying to make a good point for using GraphQL instead of just other things. So we are posting that method post, and body is going to be json.stringify with user email password. Let's try that. How does this network helper work? If I post a request, see, I implemented this like a week ago and I have forgotten most of it. So the post method post and sends the params, and what happens with the params? Body becomes JSON stringify of params. Okay, great. So back to the auth helper. And the reason I'm not using these libraries directly is because they're designed to work in the browser, and I'm not sure if they're going to work on the backend. So we have that body. We're going to say user with an email of let's try a student user. I'm going to let me make a student user just so. Do I already have a student user? Let me check. Rails C or let's go with admin because I remember their login credentials. So these are going to be test login credentials. I don't mind if you steal these. Admin@localhost.com, and password is password1. And don't worry, these don't work in production. This only works on my where does this only work? This only works on my own computer. So that's the response. Fetch, then res.json, and we're going to console log this response, which should give us an identifier and stuff like that. So I'm going to run ts node again, and this should give us everything we need to actually log in and get the cookies. So I'm going to run login, promise pending, promise undefined. It went on my backend and it said invalid JSON response body because what am I missing? No route matches post API login. Oh, I forgot to set headers again. Headers. All right, let's try that again. Okay, let's try that again. So this is going to be a little bit of trial and error. Yes, Alistair, you are right. I need the headers again. And our API confusingly returns the 404 error if you don't include those headers. So I think this is making a request. It's not console logging anything. Why is nothing getting console logged? But my backend is saying that we successfully logged in. So I'm going to see what we do here. Response. So we say return the response. Hey Magdi, how are you doing today? So we're returning that response, running the login function, and then we are going to say that this is an async function test call, and let's do what? Let's log in first. So we're going to say the test call is going to say const identifier and access token comes from await login. So that should in theory log us in, and then we need to add more headers to the headers, which are the authentication headers. So headers are going to be ... the normal headers, and then we're going to add these things. So we're going to have identifier and access token, and let's see what happens, right? So we can say const user data equals await this fetch, do this stuff, and then console log user data, and we're going to await the test call down here. So I'm going to run ts node again, and we're going to see if this manages to log into my server, get the credentials, and then return a bunch of data about the user. And then we're going to use that data to start working on the GraphQL version of this API. Magdi, I'm doing pretty well actually. It's fun to explore how this might work. So we get all of this, paste it here, plop, and then run the test call, and let's see what happens. Voila! We got a bunch of data about the user. So this is a lot of data already, and this is actually one of the smaller user objects you can get, because this is not a end user. This is an admin user, which means they don't have a lot of data. So with all of this, this is actually my work project. Come on. Why does my computer think the iPad in? Okay, so let's see. This is all of the data we got. For the user. So we get all of this stuff. You see, we get everything from the success for this particular API, the access token, the ID, a bunch of data about the user. We get their profile, their onboarding application, this a bunch of different stuff. Maybe I just call it dayjob.exe. I don't know, I think I'm funny. But basically the point is that this single API request returns a lot of data. I can make it return even more data by adding include settings here. Where do I say include settings? Let me check. And then we'll get all of the settings object as well. So include settings. No, where does it? Okay, I don't know why it's not including this, adding even more data, but this is going to be good enough for, it is deployed. Wait, is what deployed, Mehdi? Oh my God. Can you kill the bird, Morg? Okay, so we have this. This is our example data. Actually, I'm gonna put this in the Scratchpad. Open Scratchpad. So this is the data we're working with, like this. And then in GraphQL TS, I'm going to now take all of this stuff and let's make a simple file that will work with our API. Let's call it, what should we call it? API wrapper? Yeah, let's call it API wrapper. So we say source API wrapper.ts, API wrapper.ts, and this is going to have all of the same stuff as before, except now it's going to, let's make it a class. So we're going to say class API wrapper is this stuff. It starts with headers. Why is this not working? Oh, right, because now I'm not using the right. So login is an async function. No? Why don't I know how to define a JavaScript class? Headers equals that stuff. We don't need this, we don't need this, we don't need this. Okay, and then async function login. Is that how I define it? Constructor method or access property. What? How do I not know how to do this? Oh, I know how to do this. Okay, now I know how to do this. Async login is that, and then we have async test call, which is all of that. Cool. Headers becomes this dot headers, and then when we log in, yeah, Sean Grove, you're right. We all look this shit up every time, huh? So instead of returning the response, the login should, what should it do? Should we do this on when we construct the object? I think that makes sense. And then we can, yeah. Okay, so login, we're gonna make it run the login function as few times as possible. So we export class API wrapper. API wrapper headers is blah async login. The async login function is going to then change the local headers. So this dot headers becomes this dot headers, and we add all of this stuff. So response.identifier, response.access token. Come on, response. Why is this? What is wrong with this? What? Does not exist on type promise any. Of course it does exist. That's annoying. How did I solve this here? how do I tell it that this is definitely going to have that response? Login response. I'm going to just define a type because that's going to be the easiest. So type login response is going to be something that has a success, which is a Boolean, I think, and it's going to have throw in an await. Alistair, that is a good point. Await and success Boolean identifier, which is a string, and access token, which is also a string. Will that make it happy? Why is it still complaining about this? Type user string blah. What if I make it a string? Oh, right, because now it's saying that headers is, let's make it a JSON blob. So we say type JSON blob equals a type that has key string that maps to a string. Okay, so we've got the JSON blob stuff. That should work. So we now have logging in. And we're going to say headers are going to be this.headers, and on constructor we're going to run await this.login. Does that work? Now let's just have this.login. Async constructor. Can constructors be async? Okay, constructors cannot be async, so we just call this.login, which is not great. So we're gonna have to, let's do it this way. At the start of every call, we're going to run the login function, and we're going to make the login function check whether the headers are already defined. So we're going to say await this.login. So that's awaiting the login, and the login will check if this.headers of X has user account. X has user account, then we just bail. So that's the memoization. Already logged in, keep going. Add login stuff to headers for others to use, for other methods. Okay, so we've got the basic API wrapper now. We're still going to, let's call this get user for now, just so that we have, so that it's easier. We're returning the, oh wow, user data. So we return the user data now. And now here's going to, oh my God, my love, can you do something with the bird? All right, and now the trick is going to be, looking at our GraphQL, we now have to define a query to get a user, and we need to define a user type that has all of this crap. And that's going to be the annoying part, I think. So we're gonna try to automate that next time. So we say type user has a bunch of crap, and then type query is user, which gets, is that how we define that? Let me check. This is another thing I always forget, is the exact syntax for GraphQL stuff. So we look at the Markdown landing page here. Markdown landing page, come on, open. And we look at the server with, let's see, source GraphQL TS. GraphQL TS, we have the all pages, there we go, yep, I was right. So we're going to have a user, or actually, let's keep it simple. The user is just going to return a user, and it's not going to accept a user ID right now because the API itself doesn't accept a user ID. So we get the user, we're going to run the type user, and our API wrapper, let's see, where is our user defined? So we take all of this stuff, and this is a basic user data. This is going to be this is gonna be so painful. So we're going to ignore the success part. We're going to have the ID, which is a number, right? How do we define these? Okay, they don't have any. Oh, Apollo data sources REST. That sounds like a good idea. I'll check that in a bit. Let's try doing it manually first, just because I want to see if we can. So API string. Come on. So my keyboard is a little broken. Token is string. This is going to be painful. Okay, let's just look at Apollo data sources REST. But I think, or actually, let's try this first. String favorite tutor IDs. That's an array of numbers. Then we have the email, which is a string. Identifier, which is a string. Roles are an array of strings. Profile pic URL is also a string. Registered is a boolean. So I'm not gonna do all of them. I'm just gonna do a couple. I know that this is a string. String roles is a string. Then let's take the profile away for now and all of these guys and get just the basic user. So Prettier isn't happy with this right now, which is great. Does Prettier not autocomplete? There we go. Okay, so this will be our basic user type. So now we have a query. Let's get the user query, and then after when we see that this works, we're gonna try the Apollo data sources REST and see what that does. So our user doesn't need any parameters, but it's going to be a method that says const API equals new API wrapper. So we instantiate the wrapper, then we just return API .get user, and we need to, this needs to be async. Do we need to await? No, Siri, I'm not talking to you. Okay, so this should now work in theory. So let's try deploying it. Let's add git status vim.git ignore. I'm gonna add dist and serverless. Git ignore dist and .serverless. Git status git add dot git commit minus a minus m. Return user from old REST API, and we'll see what happens. So I'm running yarn deploy. Run yarn deploy. This is now going to deploy to serverless or to AWS Lambda. Alan asks if I will get to work remote because of the virus, and honestly, I don't know yet. There's been a lot of offices in SF that have closed. Ours hasn't yet, but I guess we'll see. We worked from home on Friday, but that was just a normal work from home Friday. I don't know yet. Everyone's kind of expecting that we're gonna see a message on Slack today or tomorrow morning not to come to work, but I guess we'll see. As of the latest news I had, it was that we're not working from home yet. We're still expected to come to the office. Okay, so I now have that thing deployed, and if I go here, if we look, server cannot be reached. That's weird. So dev GraphQL. Internal server error. That's interesting. Okay. So let's go see what's erroring out. AWS, my account, AWS Management Console. Let's see, maybe it's the back. Right, I think I'm back now. OBS crashed. So if we go into CloudWatch, we should be able to find the Lambda we were... Oh, why is it... why is it even turning on my webcam? That's weird. Let's remove this so it's not running two cameras. Maybe that's what's confusing it. Yeah, empty offices do sound nice, don't they? So let's go to log groups. Look for, what did we name this thing? Something about GraphQL. GraphQL REST proxy dev GraphQL. We go into the latest one we deployed and it says unknown type number. Did you mean user? What? Why is it not number? What's the other? What's the numeric type? GraphQL GraphQL types. The only native why is that an add? Schemas and types. So the default types are, come on, ID. Okay, so we do have IDs, strings. I just need a list of types, guys. Is it numeric, number? Is there just a list of types? Spec, foundation, landscape, code, learn, number, numeric. GraphQL built-in types. Int or float, that's a good one. Basic types, GraphQL tutorial. Let's see. Okay, you are right. String, float, boolean. So this is going to be an int, and this is going to be an ID. Let's call it an int, and let's deploy this again. Luckily, it's pretty fast. 49 seconds. That's not bad considering everything it's doing for us. And also, I'm pretty happy with how the new computer is dealing with streaming. My computer feels fast. I'm hoping that there's no lag on the stream itself. And it only sounds a little bit like it's trying to take off, which is really cool. All right, so that's deploying. Great, it deployed. Let's go back to our Apollo playground. That ran. So now I should be able to say query and get the user. And from the user, let's say we want to get their user type and we want to get their roles and whether this is a, let's get their email as well. So we run play and it works. Awesome. Okay, so we now have, okay, robot says if you're using Apollo in a Redux way to manage global client/local state, you don't need the Apollo link REST adapter. You can just call fetch in your resolver functions as needed. Oh, that's pretty cool. Apollo link REST adapter. I'm not sure what that actually is, but I'm pretty happy that instead of getting all of the data that we did before, so all of this data and a bunch of other data, we can now just get this stuff, which is great. So let's try, let's see, what should we try next? So we can get the user stuff. Let's try to, another huge one is the settings objects that we have. Let me check if our settings object has, if there's an API for that. So git add, git commit -a -m. GraphQL to get user data for logged in user. And so one of the problems we have with our API at work is that mobile clients make these user requests a lot, and we send them back something like 20 or 30 kilobytes of JSON, even when all they need is to update one field on their app or something. So that's totally wasteful. But if we can wrap this with GraphQL, then it would be then that would work a lot better, and we would have less load on our servers. The network would work better, the users would be happier, and everything would just be better. Cool. Yeah, so I'm streaming at 1440p. I used to stream at 5K, but then people started complaining that it's taking up too much bandwidth. So now let me check if we have a settings controller, and if that has def main. Okay, I think we do have a settings API. Let's look at routes RB settings. So get settings returns a bunch of stuff. Now let's try what that bunch of stuff actually does. So we're going to go with the same process, async settings. No Siri, go away. And I'm going to first try to check what the settings API actually returns, then make a type for it, and then use it on GraphQL. And then we're going to check the Apollo REST data sources and see if that helps. And in the meantime, Dayan Kamali asks what my thoughts are on MongoDB for a new startup. MongoDB as a database is okay. It's a good option for a new startup just because you can iterate quickly and it's easy to get started. However, I think that the lack of relational data will very quickly bite you in the ass, and you will probably want... I would honestly recommend using Postgres straight away, just because you will very quickly run into limitations with Mongo. And as a new startup, you're not big enough yet to actually benefit from the things that Mongo is good at. So Postgres is a really... Honestly, I would default to Postgres for most things, except for very quick prototypes, and then add Mongo for particular parts of your stack, depending on what you're doing and where you need it. And yeah, Hasura with Postgres JSON-DB. I haven't actually... So I use Postgres with JSON-B a lot. So Postgres gives you the best of both worlds, where it's a good way to have a NoSQL database and a lot of support for NoSQL stuff, and also have all of the benefits of a proper relational database. So I would recommend going with Postgres just for that. And as far as Hasura goes, I don't know, I haven't really used them yet, but I hear they're very great. So this login const, we say settings equals await fetch. Oh my god, Bert. So I'm just gonna copy all of this, and we return settings, and let's say API/settings. And now if we go into TS node, we should be able to import API wrapper like this. So import API wrapper, bam. Okay, import API wrapper from source/API wrapper. And the reason I'm using TS node in the console is so that I can use TypeScript directly and I don't have to compile it just to test locally. So we have that. We say const API equals new API wrapper. And then we say API.settings, and let's see what happens. We should probably console log that. Async, let's say async test does that, and it says console log await API settings. What? Oh, async test. Okay, test equals async that. That way it's gonna work. Const test, and now we call test, promise pending, and then it's going to console log. Using Alistair says he's been using Postgres on his latest project and it's awesome, and he used PostGraphQL and it was good too. It gives the edge to Hasura at this stage though. Permission system is easier than RLS. Sure. So we now have all of our settings, and there's a lot of our settings. So I'm going to, here again, you will see why GraphQL is going to be better. So if we say type settings, and I paste all of this in here, there's going to be a lot. Bam. So let's try. How can we do this? Let's go. String, int. Oh my god, Bert, shut the fuck up. Can you kill him, please? So int, I'm going to, this part is kind of a schlep, so I wonder if we can automate this. How could we make this automated? If we take this in as a JSON, we can spit out. Okay, let's try this. I'm going to, after this, I promise I'm going to look at the Apollo REST data source, but right now I want to see if I can create a dirty hack for this. So we have an example JSON. Let's create a file that creates a GraphQL type. Okay, command new, and we say import JSON to TypeScript interface. So this isn't JSON to TypeScript. This is actually we're trying to change JSON into a GraphQL type. So we're gonna say create GraphQL type.ts. Okay, and let's see. We need to. So the process here. Get JSON from sample API, inspect JSON, spit out GraphQL type. JSON to simple GraphQL schema. Very nice. Thank you, Ludwig. So if we go to Walmart labs dot, actually, let's see if I can copy this. That's so much better than having to invent it from scratch. Walmart Labs, JSON to simple GraphQL schema. Sweet. So we take all of this shit. Come on. Oh, so let's actually console log this more properly. So we're going to say const test2. So as you saw, there were a bunch of here that are just object of object. So I want to change those to actually console log everything. So I'm going to look at node console log deep. I know that this is a Stack Overflow answer, so I'm going to copy paste it. You are not using JSON. Robin Malfate, I am using JSON because my API spits out JSON. So what I'm trying to do is get the API result and turn it into a GraphQL schema so that I don't have to write the GraphQL schema by hand. So we take this. All right. Const util equals requires util. Then we create a new test function which awaits API settings and runs console log util.inspect. Yeah, exactly. So I'm getting the raw result right now. Util inspect false, null, true. And we run test2. So instead of Postman or curl, I'm just using TypeScript TS node directly and taking all of this shit. So see, the settings object is huge. I'm still scrolling up and it's still getting the JSON data. And imagine every client that we have makes this request millions of times per hour, or like at least a couple times per, I think the mobile clients actually make this request every 30 seconds, and it's just way too much data. They don't need this much data. So we go here, paste the JSON, unexpected token T in position 4. What? Okay, right. So we go into JSON lint to get the proper JSON, to get a cleaned up JSON. Come on, I know you can do this. Validate JSON new. Expected string got undefined. Right. All right. So let's do this. So const test 3. Instead of console log of that, we're going to JSON stringify this stuff. And now it's going to work. Bam. Come on. No? Oh, I need to call it. Call the function, promise pending. Bam. Got a bunch of shit with a lot of weird characters. Let's see if this works. This could potentially work, or it could not. I don't know. Oh, you know what I can do? I still have it. So VS Code actually has a really cool feature. If I save this as a JSON file, let's say settings data.json, save, it should prettify into having all of the proper quotes and stuff and being a proper JSON file. So we go back into this simple GraphQL schema and we got the schema. Yeah, or, you know, I already have it. So we got this thing, GraphQL TS. I'm gonna go here. I'm gonna say, we're gonna paste all of the schema stuff. Prettier is not very happy with me. Why is Prettier not happy with me? Type user, types. Okay, so can I write comments in here? Nope, I cannot write comments. So we're gonna see which one broke, but we have this stuff. Name string, emoji string. What's it complaining? Why is this? What is wrong here? Okay, so why is this not? Let's try, let's go one by one. Okay, so that worked. Let's put in the subtopics and stuff. Okay. Schema generated with this stuff. So we get that, then we get settings. Where did it get settings? Also, that's settings. Type definitions, type achievements, messages, resume session. So some of these names are not the best, but they should be fine. Come on, why is this? Why do I need to go one by one? Seriously? So something here is confusing Prettier, but I'm not sure what. All right, so Julian, enjoy. Thanks for joining. Let's see. Type messages. Aha! I think this one came out wrong. Or not? We'll see. So we have that. Then we get resume session. Yeah. So type messages is wrong. Why is messages wrong? Why is messages even in here? Where does it say messages? Perm. So this is in resume session. In resume session, it's an array of, resume session has an array of string. Can that work? Okay, so that's happy now. Then we take script nodes. That should work. And chatbot script, that's another huge setting. This one should work too. Type cancellation reasons should be fine. Nice. Marketing copy and marketing content. That works. Marketing content also works. And then we're going to have the plans. These are our subscription plans that you can buy, and they all come through in settings. Other plans. Jesus Christ. See, this is why we need GraphQL for the settings, because these settings are huge. Type subscription. Then type session cancel reasons. And we get the upsell banner, which we're not even using anymore. So a lot of these settings are actually outdated as well. And all of those are reasons why we need GraphQL. So we have that, upgrade, upsell. That works. Type banner should also work. And type canned responses should work. Then we need static page mobile URLs, apparently. Who designed that awful blob? So, Eddie, that is a great question. This awful blob evolved over like 6 or 7 years. Anytime we needed to make something configurable, we just added it here. And, you know, things spiraled from there. So we just kept adding and adding, and nobody ever reviewed what we need and what we don't need. So now these settings, achievements, are going to be like this, because I want the main thing to be called settings. So these are going to be achievement settings. Achievement settings. Achievement settings. And the main one down here is going to be actually called settings. So settings. Alright, so we have this giant ass horrible blob, and I'm going to here say settings, and create GraphQL types is no longer needed. So the settings, yeah, the REST API output was, that one was just evolved over a very, very long ass time. So we say const API equals new API wrapper, and we return API.settings. And if I deploy this, yarn deploy, it should just work. Let's see if it actually does just work. And this will be, I think this will be the strongest proof of concept I can offer to the other guys on my team, that we should start working on GraphQL and actually using it in our API and stuff. And just like the main point of this stream was proving that you can use REST APIs as an input to your GraphQL server and make a very simple proxy so that you can then use GraphQL without actually refactoring anything on your backend, which is kind of what everyone's afraid of. Oh no, GraphQL, it's so hard, it's so much work, but you know what? This is so much easier. So we now can go into, we now can say settings, and let's see, what kind of setting do we want? No, I don't, okay, fine. Let's say I want traffic status, and let's say we want to see the static page mobile URLs that nobody is actually using anymore. So if I press play, we get static page mobile URLs must have a selection of subfields, which makes sense. So what are the static page mobile URLs? We need to static page mobile URLs. Oh, and another benefit, we now have docs. So you can go into documentation for settings, look for, we said static page mobile URLs, and you can see that we have the referral URL, which seems useful. And let's say we want to show the legal URL, right? And try getting this for your REST API. Does your REST API have docs like this? I know mine doesn't. Press play. It's a little slow because my server went to sleep, but I get everything now. Yay. Oh, that's interesting. The user doesn't work anymore. There we go. So server woke up and we now have a beautiful, much easier to use traffic status is normal. Let's see, what else can we get? Docs for the settings. We can also show, what can settings show us? Let's say we want to get subjects. There was like the subjects we teach. These are basically subjects we teach are, so we have lower math and upper math right now. So let's get the subject name. And what else does the subject have? Subject, a name, and whether there's currently anyone available to teach that. And let's say, what else? A blurb. So the blurb is like a description for each subject. Press play and we automatically get exactly what we need and only what we need. It's kind of weird that the user data keeps changing like this, but that's probably something to do with my implementation. The point is, we now have a much easier API to use, which is great. So I think that's pretty much, yeah, I think that's all I needed to really, for this proof of concept, to show, hey, you can use GraphQL with an existing RESTful API. You don't need to refactor your entire server. You don't even need to rewrite the server. Hell, you don't even have to touch the server. You can just implement a proxy, deploy it to AWS with an AWS Lambda, and start sending requests there, and everything should work. I mean, obviously, it's gonna take you a little time to create all of the GraphQL schemas, to port all of the APIs. It would be cool if that could be automated. I don't think that's the scope of this particular live stream, trying to figure out how to automate generating a GraphQL server based on just looking at your RESTful API. And yeah, so yeah, that's everything I wanted to explore and show today. I think I'm going to publish an article on this either tomorrow or later this week. Tomorrow might be better suited for something else. So keep watch, and thanks everyone for watching. So that's going to be it for today. We do have a technique to automate it. Sean Grove, please let me know. Yeah, so Magdi, I know I can get auto-completion directly in the playground, but I need to know what I'm searching for. I had the problem that I couldn't think of the first letters to start writing. After you know those, yes, you can auto-complete anything. And yeah, would be cool if we can automate this. Sean says that he has an idea for how to automate it. I don't know yet. I'd need to do more research. So that's it for today. Thanks for watching, and I'm pretty excited that we figured this out, because now I have a really good piece of evidence to show to the other people on my team. Thanks guys and gals, whoever was out there.